Tommy Hearns. This is the thing about Tommy Hearns, and I think a lot of people, especially early on in boxing, or if you follow the sport, even if you became a Hearns fan late, you kind of missed a lot about Tommy Hearns.
How could
Tommy Hearns?
Take me back. Why is it you would become a Hearns fan late? Because from the start of his career, he didn't really have the power he had, but he was always a fantastic boxer. Is that kind of what it was?
That's exactly what it was. He had the potential to be a great boxer. And if you look, and we're going to get to the Ray Leonard fight, but because we're talking about him first, we have to describe that. In the first fight, Tommy was doing a magnificent job of boxing Ray Leonard. A magnificent job. Along the 12th, 13th round, the 11th, the 12th round, you could kind of see he was kind of burning out a little bit. Ray Leonard's advantage was conditioning. And if Tommy Hearns ever had a problem, was he did not like to run and do the other things because he has such a natural talent. And Emmanuel even told me that this kid can be the best, and he was doing an excellent job. As a matter of fact, the reason Ray took the time off from boxing was because of the jab that Tommy Hearns had put in his face so many times in that fight. And
so he wanted to go back and do his homework, and because I feel the same way. I felt that for the first half of the fight, Hearns was outboxing Sugar Ray, and not just because of his superior reach either, because he was setting traps better and his footwork was better, more efficient, cleaner.
Emmanuel told me once that and I say Emmanuel Stewart for those who don't know, so to clarify. But Emmanuel told me his biggest concern about Tommy wasn't the fact that Tommy wasn't in the greatest of shape, because he basically was in good shape. But condition and shape are two different things, David, as you well know, especially when dealing with the MMA guys. So you know that. You look like your body is here and all of that, but you're not in the next best. Some guys look in the mirror and say, boy, I got, what they call them, 12-pack, 6-pack, whatever they call them. You know, I look good. But Tommy Hearns had this potential to lag in fights. He got kind of like, I forget, I want to think of the word that Emmanuel said. That was a word he used, and Tommy did that.
Was that because there are two reasons generally, though. One is that they're too tense, and the other is that they just don't put the work in the gym. Are you saying it was more the second, according to Emmanuel?
I think it was more. It seems as if Emmanuel's concern was the second. You know, and I, like I said, I'm not just guessing this. I'm from having conversations with him, and it was the same way with another heavyweight that we'll be talking about later on. But it was that's pretty much what it was. And I think that after 10 rounds or 11 rounds, he thought he'd have Sugar Ray out by that time. And it looked like, because they were, as you know, that with the eye being shut, it was pretty much on the verge of perhaps stopping that fight. And of course, you know, things it changed, and Ray did it to him. But at that time, I think he was known as the Motor City Cobra.
He changed back and forth a couple times, yeah.
He changed back, yeah. And his moniker, I think, was a downfall with him. Once he wanted to become, because he never wanted to go to rounds anymore, he wanted to knock guys out after the Ray Leonard fight.
Because he didn't have that at the beginning of his career.
He didn't have it at the beginning. Yeah, he didn't have, but the weight, because Tommy was a tall guy for that, you know, for those particular
freakishly tall for his weight
class.
Freakishly
tall.
One of the few guys to get picked on in school as the tallest kid in class.
Hey, isn't that something?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, because I know, because I was the shortest guy in class, so I got the other side.
I was the second shortest guy, and so I was always very proud of that. I wasn't the shortest guy.
So what happened? So after the Leonard fight, everybody kind of figured that, you know, what Tommy can't, you know, he has trouble going into 10, 11, 12 rounds. But Tommy wanted to become known as a knockout guy himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, rather than his great experience in boxing, he had the best teacher in boxing in Emmanuel Stewart. He had guys in the gym that were great boxers, McCrory, McCallum, the body snatcher, McCallum. He had great Jimmy Paul, great boxers in the gym with you. And you guys learned the sport. But it happens. And I think that was the reason Tommy Hearns ran into the problems. He started wanting to have knockouts. The fight with Marvin Hagler. You know, he didn't want to box. And Hagler knew he's not. Hagler, in his mind, with the experience that he had, Hagler knew that he could not outbox Tommy Hearns. He knew he couldn't do it, so he had to make it into a war.
Which was a brilliant plan, and definitely one of the fights we'll talk about in an upcoming episode. As far as the conditioning thing, it kind of works in two ways, because one, if the conditioning isn't there, then your reflexes start to dull. And and for anyone listening, you could have participated in any sport and knows that this happens, or you could be a chess player and know that this happens, because it's almost the same kind of thing. You just don't notice things. Even if you notice them, you don't react as quickly. And then the other way to look at it is conditioning has a huge impact on your chin and your body. Fatigue, yes, absolutely.
Fatigue.
So
great poker players have to have that. You know that? Great poker players have to have that.
I never thought about it, actually.
Yeah, those games go so long that they start to make mistakes because their minds start to wander. They get tired, they get sleepy. And when that happens after those marathons, and they play, they either don't pick a card or they play cards that they have and forget the other guy across from me. He's doing, it's like every fight in the gym, you have to think that I did 10 rounds. And you have to think that he might have done 11. So I got to do 12. So you have to keep that. And I don't think Emmanuel was ever really able to push that into Tommy's head.
So first it was a matter of being naturally gifted at boxing, and then as he put on a little bit of muscle, and then those long arms worked so well as levers, he just got this other natural gift. And he never thought that until he came up against that other 1% of competition. He had never thought before that there could be someone who could challenge him in that way. But
that's exactly what happened.
As we all know, Hagler and Leonard were exceptional, and any one of the four kings, I mean, Duran kind of did because he didn't move up and wait until later, but any one of the four kings could have dominated during another era. That's what makes it so fascinating. I mean, Leonard came out on top, and that's it's very much debatable.
And that's debatable,
yeah.
To a point.
Yeah.
Because you look at the Hagler fight, and it depends on whose fan you are. Then you're going to see something different. But I look at that fight.
And the second Hearns fight, in my opinion, and I'm a huge Sugar Ray Leonard fan, in case
Tommy won
people
that.
can't tell, but yeah, for sure Hearns won that. For sure he did. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it in some episode, I'm sure, about the business of this boxing game. And as we do, I'll even bring that into, to fruition for you to tell you how that sometimes works as well.
So let's, I guess we covered his boxing a little bit. Footwork, who would you compare him to?
Tommy, to be honest with you, and if you'd almost have to go up into, if we're talking about the Tommy Hearns, the welterweight, right? Not the Tommy Hearns that became a flat foot guy later on. Because I think that when I look at him and his movement that he could, Archie Moore probably is the only other guy that, because Archie Tommy had great balance. I mean, he had leverage on his punch. Every time he threw, Emmanuel taught him, when he sat down with a punch, he threw it. But he threw it with his hips. He did everything that, and your feet you have to have good movement. People talk about even Ray Leonard, but Ray Leonard didn't have the best. He had quick feet, but his movement was totally different because Ray was all up here more than he was. When I say up here, I mean, up here than he was down here. So
I think their footwork, people look at them kind of like Ali clones, but I think Hearns definitely, like you said, had, until the later rounds when his legs started to give way, obviously, had the better balance. One of the things he did that's always fascinating to me that Ali used to do in a slightly different way is he'd keep like such a narrow stance, like totally sideways, but he could slip to the inside, which is so hard to do. You have to cross your back foot over and then somehow escape. But it's a great draw. He would draw a jab that way and then just from that really awkward position reach out with that long arm. And
what Archie Moore should say? Archie Moore should say about Ali? Say he did everything wrong and made it right. I mean, because you just said you crossed your back leg. Nobody teaches you to cross your back leg. He did everything wrong, but he made it right. The speed and everything else made it right. And Archie went to work with him later on, as you well know. After he fought him, of course, he was like 90 years old. But
yeah, that fight shouldn't be considered even on his record.
But he still fought him, and Archie was able to teach him some things later, not realizing that 20 years into the future, you'd be up against
another one of his students.
One of his students like that. But still, so Tommy had the balance that it took. He could throw the, if you watch Archie, he copied the hook to the body with the balance of his feet. I mean, I'm talking about Tommy. The hook to the balance. And Emmanuel Stewart loved, there's a lot of people, a lot of time guys don't tell you, but he loved, Archie Moore is one of his favorite guys that he likes to watch. He had videos of Archie Moore, Willie Pep, Ike Williams, guys like that. He kept in his Well, back then you had the big VHS things that was like this big, bigger than a suitcase. But he kept those. I lose you somewhere along the way. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. He kept those videos to look at, and Tommy literally had copied that. If you see it in maybe his first 15, 16, maybe 20 fights, you spotted that.
Yeah, Archie Moore was he had so many tricks that he could be maybe 7 complete fighters. One of the things he did was the what I just said that Hearns did, the lean back there. Another one I love that he did is he let them circle inside to a place where you'd normally be vulnerable, but he'd use that cross guard. So he'd block it that way. So he was he was very forward, and then he'd use that twist to kind of go up. So
exactly.
Yeah, but I didn't know there was that direct reference to where he actually studied him, and then Emmanuel actually studied him. That's pretty fascinating, as everyone should.
Well, that's what we give you. We give you that information here. Like that. When you got an old guy like me, I can tell you those things.
well, it's fascinating. Keep telling them. We're gonna talk about in an upcoming segment. We're gonna talk about the best right hands in boxing, but I think we need to briefly mention it. If we're gonna talk about Hearns, when he became the Hitman, he had a good left hand, but it was so much because of that chopping right.
Exactly.
So I have my opinions on this. What do you think of Hearns chopping right?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of like I'm thrown in between because I still wanted to see the boxer Tommy Hearns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think it was the fight with Duran, or maybe the fight before Duran. But I know the fight with Duran. But as you said, at that time Duran had pretty much, when he had done his best that he could, and moving up in those weight categories just wasn't the same. And actually those guys were 5 or 6 years younger than he was at the time. But I never was impressed with the way Tommy, because Tommy, if you look again, and this again comes from studying, when you throw a right hand, if you're not snatching back with the hook, you leave yourself vulnerable to too much.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember, and
he paid for it at times.
Yes, he did. He paid for that. And I mean, it's one of those things kind of like, I remember with my brother one time in the gym, a guy kept telling me, said, it was Charlie Shipes, and he said, this guy's going to come and he's going to throw you, when you throw your right hand, and he's, you're going to make him miss it just about this much. And when the guy does, his body's going to enjoy it. You always say, boy, I hope he throws that right hand. But sometimes you get a guy in there, once he becomes, that knows that you're aware of what that weakness is, they won't throw it. But then sometimes a guy gets too much confidence in that hand, and that's when you get it. And Tommy had a little bit too much confidence in that right hand because, as you said, he had a good jab, but I don't think he just didn't want to use it. He didn't want to go to rounds. I think he was more satisfied with doing the 2 rounds or 3 rounds, whatever it was, getting Hagler, because I don't think Tommy was prepared to go deep into the rounds anyway. But that right hand was his downfall, rather than wanting to realize that it's a one, it's here, bam, 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 then here. But you set up the right hand. You don't just go out deliberately throwing it. You set up the right hand.
That's what I was going to say. We're coming at it from different ways. You were saying that he should definitely have been wary of a counter and followed up with the left hook. I completely agree. From the setup that you just mentioned, that's what I was going to say. To where when he was setting up that right with his jab skillfully and not over-relying on it, staying a boxer until the moment presented himself, he was unbeatable. But when he just spammed that right hand off of the same jab or no jab at all, and he had so many beautiful setups too. I wish we've talked about Wilder before and how he doesn't have the setup for his right hand, even though he has such a wonderful right hand. Hearns would jab and then hope that they slip down to the outside of his punch,
exactly,
so that he could come over. And he got it should have technically been illegal if you're going to slow down the footage, but it really wasn't, because when he was starting the punch, it was aimed at the head. The fact it got behind the ear on the top of the head was really just due to them crouching. So,
and that's hard for a referee to react that fast in a ring.
Of course,
guys are making 2 moves. So, and when that punch, if I'm correct, I think he hit Duran with a shot like that. And by that time,
he hit him with a lot of shots. But if you're talking about the one that sounds like a gunshot, that's possible. Yeah. Although I do remember Duran's head being whipped around, but I don't know. I'm surprised his head didn't fall off. Yeah. That was the most brutal. That would have killed anyone that wasn't Duran, pretty much.
I remember when Emmanuel, we were there. I didn't do the broadcast, but just there at that fight. And before that, Jimmy Paul was in the fight, another one of Crunk's great champions. And the guys went into the corner with him. Emmanuel was in the back room getting Tommy ready, and Jimmy was having problems with this guy. And I can't remember who the fighter was, but Emmanuel comes out in between the second and third round, I think it was, says something in Jimmy Paul's ear, and Jimmy Paul goes back out in the next round, whatever it does, and the fight's over, just like that, bam. So when you got guys like that, and they all kind of wanted to have that Motor City Cobra hitman mentality, but it was always, if you can have that, but you better be prepared to do what has to be done in order to get that. And if you notice, if you think about all those guys, Corey, Body Snatcher, when I say Body Catcher, Mike McCallum, Jimmy, all those guys became knockout artists because of that. You know, I think Hal McKenty might have even been in that group. I can't remember that for sure, but I think he was. But so when you start looking at these great, and that's what really gave Crunk the name, why everybody wanted to be part of Crunk, because you had all these guys giving these knockouts. And Tommy Hearns is the one that led the way to that. You know, it wasn't even, but as you said before, his confidence in his right hand was just a little bit too much. And it wound up costing him, you know, like I said, the fight with Hagler, the fight with Ray, even though you said, I thought he won the second fight going away, but that's another thing. And then a couple others he had. I think when he won, the best fight he probably had was when he won, I think it was the light heavyweight against the guy, it was light heavyweight or cruiserweight, the title that he won. That was perhaps the best boxing job I had ever, other than Sugar Ray, that I ever seen.
I can't even think off the top of my head who his competitor was, but
I should know that.
Last
I
weight.
was there.
I should. I've seen the fight, but it's been years.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too. But it wasn't Rodan, but it was a guy. I forget the guy's name, but it was a terrific boxing job. The guy was a champion. Tommy took his title away from the guy.
Going up that many weight classes, it's something him and very few other people could have done.
Yes, could have done. Great Sugar Ray Leonard, great Sugar Ray Robinson couldn't do it. You know, he did everywhere but up to the top. Once he got to the bigger boys, it became a problem with him. He was winning.
Wasn't he winning? Yeah, he was winning, and then it was just too hot.
Again, fatigue. That's the thing about it. Fatigue sets in and everything else. And Ray had been such a great champion. It had gotten to the point that even in the gym, they couldn't tell him much. It's like, you know, hey, man, I'm 19-time world champion. You know, I know what I'm doing. I'm sure I'm the best in the world. So, but you know, that's the way. But that's the way it goes. That's the fight game.
All right, this segment is called Roy's Stories, and Roy Foreman here is going to tell us something interesting, some behind-the-scenes knowledge that very few people have access to, or a unique spin on the story. Today, we're going to be talking about the great Joe Louis. Roy, why don't you take it away?
It's, you know, again, Dave, these stories, there's so many to tell, but since everybody likes to talk, you know, like what we started by talking about Joe, and there's two parts. I'll talk about the first time we met Joe Louis. Okay.
Yeah.
This is probably perhaps set the tone for the way things were going to be for the years that he and George's relationship. We were there was a family. George had just won the Olympics. Let me clarify that. Boy, he just won a gold medal.
As
so
he
of
do.
course,
yeah.
And people were trying to, you know, get him, and they would bring everybody to impress, you know, George with this and with that. You know, we brought this guy. So this particular time, there was a family called the Island family. They owned the New York Jets at the time. Bill Island and Jerry Island. They were in this. I think they had that the gas company as well. I can't think of the gas company name, but they owned that as well. Very wealthy family. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, if you own if you own something that you could own in Monopoly, then you're probably wealthy. Yeah,
you're probably wealthy, right? So not rich, but wealthy. And so they brought Joe Louis in. So I'm 12, 13 years old, I think it was by this time. And I guess the idea was to see Joe Louis, greatest heavyweight champion ever at this time, blah, 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 blah. So we're in. And the guys were trying to convince George to sign with them. And one of the guys that was with us, remember now, nobody knows, I'm a kid though, but my brother would always take me with him. So I wasn't in on negotiations. I was there because I was George's little brother. He like taking me places with him. And we would go. So one of the guys with us was trying to negotiate with the Isler family. And they came in and offered my mother something like a home, and at that time, 28 grand, which is more money than I'd ever heard of at that time in 1969, 68. So it's like, whoa, we'll take the deal. But the guy with us was trying to be impressive, let's say it like that. Well, I don't know, because maybe, George went off with money to go to Hollywood, to do a movie. Joe Louis was eating some not pecans, peanuts. Hadn't said a word, right? And the first word out of his mouth was, this is the exact words he said, "F him then."
He's so quiet too. He has this kind of quiet, noble dignity. And every time I've seen him doing anything, whether it's an interview or footage of him just like, inside, outside of the ring, just super. It's like if Morgan Freeman said that almost, because you don't expect it out of his mouth. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's not like he was Samuel L. Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson, you figure, you know what something's coming. That's why I don't know how in the hell he does those Marvel comic movies yet this day without cursing everybody out. But that's basically, and that's what Joe said. He said that's what he said.
He must have felt strongly about it.
Yeah, and my brother, because what he knows is 1968. First of all, there weren't many blacks in Hollywood in the first place. And guy, you just won Olympic gold medalist. You're not going in the damn well. So, let's stop all this BS and going along. And my brother kind of looked at him. He didn't know what to say, because these words came out of Joe Louis's mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
Living legend at the time, yeah.
Living legend. And so from that point on, I knew that we were going to have a relationship with him, because he was the first person. Everybody's told you everything else, right? You can do this, you can do that, but Joe Louis has lived this life. So he's telling you what you need to do if you want to get your game together. We didn't sign with the Islam family. We wound up because George was more impressed from a persona with Sonny Liston than he was with Joe Louis at that time. And that was the start of the George Foreman, Joe Louis association moving into the boxing world.
But it sounds like a pivotal choice there too for your brother about which one to idolize.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the stories about Joe, and Joe Louis was this. There was a story that Joe Louis was broke, right? Had spent all of his money, and because of what the government had done for him. In some ways, the millions that he had spent, but Joe Louis was an icon, and everybody liked having Joe Louis around. So when you brought Joe Louis, you paid it, and even we were with him.
So is the story that's generally told not entirely true about how the U.S. kind of screwed him over? Or are you saying that there are other circumstances too?
There were other circumstances. This is the thing about athletes in general, not just boxers, but particularly probably boxers, because no other sport can a guy make $1 million in one night, basically. You know what I mean? I'm talking about that night. And people go like, especially back then, like, whoa, he made $1 million, man, I'm set for the rest of my life. But in Joe's case, he had a nice living, even up until that point, because people paid him to do what he did. The problem with athletes is a lot of the time they stop earning, but they want to live the same lifestyle. You want to play golf every day. You want to drive 2 or 3 Cadillacs and Mercedes, whatever you have. You want to live in a big house. You want to go out to dinner all the time and go to the finest of restaurants, but you're spending, but you're not replacing.
It becomes normal. Like that's just your everyday life. So how can you give that up?
And how can you give that up? So, but if you're not able to find those things to replace it, you can have $1 million. But if you're spending, $30,000 a month, just how long is that money going to last you if you're not replacing it? And that's basically what happened with Joe Louis. It wasn't just I hated to the point they said, oh, the government screwed him because he did so much. Well, you have to pay your taxes. Nobody is exempt from taxes.
The story that's commonly told is that he donated all the money from those fights to the government for the war effort, and then they wanted taxes on top of that. That's not true, you're saying?
No, that's not true. That's
really
no. no. I mean,
that's rewriting boxing history right there. That is
well,
very much accepted nowadays.
He donated to the boxing cause. He's very big. He did commercials. He pushed at that time War Bonds was big. And yeah, just like even today, some of these guys, they donate to this. But let me tell you something. No guy's going to get punched in the head for 12 rounds, make $500,000 and give it all to the government. Okay? I don't care how much you love this country. Nobody's going to do that. But no, you know, you didn't have tax breaks. See, back then, the income tax was like 50%. So if you made $500,000, not even including the other things, the state tax and everything else that went on, you made $500,000, you got $250. But you're spending it, and then come time to pay your taxes, it's not there. So now
you could be in a bit of trouble there.
Yeah, and you do owe Uncle Sam. Not that Uncle Sam was coming looking for you, but the government never tried to arrest Joe. They did nothing like that. It's just that's what he fell into, that fit, and still living the lifestyle. So as he got older, you know, the story sounds better. Yeah. Because rather than putting the blame on Joe, on him, you put it on somebody else. And that's what the writers, again, we talk about the media, I tell you all the time. It's how they put the story out there.
But I had no idea it was that was a motorcycle going by. Okay. I had no idea that it was that prevalent that a story could be misconstrued. I mean, I've seen it happen online a lot, to where, for whatever reason, and maybe this comes from the media, people think that Frazier and Ali were very good friends before the fight, and they think that Joe had all the same beliefs as Ali. Now, like we talked about before, Frazier was portrayed very unfairly by Ali and others, but there were big differences. One is that Frazier said that he was, in his own book, that he was, you know, if he was called up on the draft, he would have gone, and that Ali should have gone. But for whatever reason online, everyone, or not everyone, but a large majority of people are convinced that's not true, even though it's in his autobiography that he himself wrote, probably with a ghostwriter's help too. So I just had no idea that things could be this badly. I knew they could online. I had no idea things could be this badly misconstrued by professional writers and put into publication.
But it's not misconstrued, David. They know exactly what they're writing.
Okay.
They know exactly what they're writing. It's not misconstrued. It's just that the story, you know, everybody comes, it's like I'll tell you where the story comes from about the first thing they say he has the killer instinct, right? That started with Joe Louis back, and he fought, what was it, Max Baer? Maybe the fight before was Max Baer. And Joe went in for the kill, right? And the guy writes in the next day, said, boy, Joe Louis has the killer instinct. That's why all that started. That was never used before that time, but not by many other fighters even then. But along the way, it became the killer. A fighter has to have the killer instinct in order to be a good finisher. At that time, Joe Louis was a great finisher. But
for sure he was. Yeah.
Probably the best finisher in the game. But along that point, a writer has to write something a little bit different. So he said he had the killer instinct. Gave him that, it stuck from that point on. So guys started getting it, you know, killer instinct. And that's
so
what
it could reach into the consciousness of kind of like the nomenclature, the vocabulary of everyday people, and no one knows where the term even comes from.
No idea. They just started using it.
Now it's a pretty good video game.
But I mean,
killer instinct.
When you look at like using those examples of that, but like Joe and Ali, Joe Frazier and Ali got to be better friends after the sport. Like he, George, and all of them did. They did them when we were kings. They all got to be great friends afterwards.
Yeah,
because it was just about the competition in the ring. And once Joe got to understand how Ali was, it was easy. You don't hold nothing. Joe Frazier held nothing against anybody. I guarantee you he didn't. Against no one. So and Ali was just a clown character. That was his facade, man. He said, you know what? I'm not gonna show you I'm scared. So I got to do something and say something that's for you to throw you off, and that's all it was. That was his way.
And it usually worked. Obviously, with Frazier, backfired, but usually ruffled feathers a little bit.
Yeah, that's all it was. But Joe, back to Louis, Joe Louis. That was, you know, late on in his life. Joe lived a pretty good life. He worked as a greeter. People said doorman, but he was a greeter at Caesar's Palace. And they paid him like $50,000 to $75,000 a year. He lived in a nice place off the golf course.
You see, that's not how I've heard the story portrayed. This is it's back to what we were just talking about. I heard that he was so destitute that they had him working as a doorman, like they were offering him minimum wage.
Yeah, well, look at, sometimes you'll see the picture and you'll see him up there meeting guys at the door with his coat on, his hat on, his vest and stuff. And he said he's shaking this guy's hand, Joe Louis meets on. And people, again, the story has to be, what do people, not everybody, but what do people like more than a feel-good story? It's a
feel-bad story. Yeah,
yes,
the downfall
story.
Yeah,
that's what they like even more. Frank Sinatra, yes. Did he help Joe Louis and that whole group of the Rat Pack guys? They loved him. They took care of it. They liked to have him around. That's how Caesar's Palace gave him the job. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., they were regulars there at Caesar's Palace, so they liked him. They played golf with Joe every day. When he died, he was in the hospital. My brother, we spent time with him in the Houston hospital, down at the Methodist Hospital when he was there, and George visited him every day. And those were the things that you remembered about Joe. Destitute, I mean, say this. Okay, was he making $1 million? No. But destitute, that's not the right word.
Okay. Well, thanks for putting that to rest. Hopefully, maybe this will get some traction and some kind of professional acting sports writers will take it up and
maybe
set the record straight.
Yeah, hopefully.